The case of Philippine Long Distance Telephone Company, PLDT, versus National Telecommunications Commission, NTC, and Express Telecommunications Company, Inc. ETCI, GR number 88404, October 18, 1990. Doctrine of the case. A provisional authority issued by the National Telecommunications Commission, NTC, is a temporary, revocable, and limited authorization that does not amount to a Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity, CPCN. It may be granted upon a prima facie showing of the applicant's legal, technical, and financial capability, without prejudice to the outcome of the main proceedings. A legislative franchise authorizing radio telephony may be liberally construed to include cellular mobile telephone services, especially where part of the communication system utilizes radio waves. Such construction, when made by the administrative agency charged with implementation, is entitled to great weight and respect, absent grave abuse of discretion. The transfer of shares of stock in a public utility corporation does not constitute a transfer of the legislative franchise, which remains vested in the corporation itself. Approval of share transfers is governed by the Public Service Act and falls under the jurisdiction of the NTC, not Congress. The state may compel interconnection among telecommunications carriers pursuant to its police power, as telecommunications is a business imbued with public interest. Mandatory interconnection promotes public convenience, competition, and national development, and does not violate due process or property rights. Facts of the case. This case arose from the effort of the National Telecommunications Commission, NTC, to introduce competition in the Philippine cellular telecommunications industry, which at the time was effectively dominated by the Philippine Long Distance Telephone Company, PLDT. PLDT had long been the primary provider of telephone services in the country, operating as a dominant public utility with extensive control over telecommunications infrastructure and interconnection facilities nationwide. Express Telecommunications Company, Inc., ETCI, formerly FACI, sought authority from the NTC to operate a cellular mobile telephone system, CMTS, in Metro Manila. ETCI anchored its application on its legislative franchise under Republic Act No. 2090, which authorized it to construct, maintain, and operate radio stations for reception and transmission of messages of all kinds. ETCI argued that this franchise covered modern wireless communication technologies, including cellular mobile telephone systems, which were emerging as a new form of telecommunications service. After evaluating ETCI's application, the NTC issued a provisional authority, PA, allowing ETCI to begin limited commercial operations of CMTS in Metro Manila. The NTC found that ETCI had made a prima facie showing of legal, financial, and technical capability to operate the service. The Commission further emphasized that the Philippine telecommunications sector suffered from inadequate service, poor accessibility, and lack of competition, and that public interest required the immediate introduction of an additional operator to improve service quality and expand coverage. The provisional authority was subject to conditions, including compliance with technical standards and participation in an eventual interconnection arrangement with PLDT's existing network, which was necessary to ensure that subscribers of ETCI could communicate with users of PLDT's system. The NTC reasoned that interconnection was essential to prevent fragmentation of telecommunications services and to promote seamless nationwide communication. PLDT strongly opposed the NTC's order and filed a petition for certiorari and prohibition before the Supreme Court. PLDT argued that ETCI's franchise did not authorize the operation of a cellular mobile telephone system, asserting that such service constituted a new and distinct public utility requiring a separate legislative franchise. PLDT further contended that the NTC acted with grave abuse of discretion in issuing the provisional authority without fully resolving legal and factual issues regarding ETCI's qualifications and franchise coverage. PLDT also questioned the legality of ETCI's corporate structure and stock ownership changes, arguing that the transfer of shares among foreign and local entities effectively altered control over the franchise, which should require congressional approval. Additionally, PLDT objected to the mandatory interconnection order, claiming that it infringed on its property rights and business autonomy, and that the NTC had no authority to compel private utilities to interconnect their systems. Issues and ruling. Issue 1. Whether the NTC gravely abused its discretion in granting provisional authority to ETCI. No, the NTC did not commit grave abuse of discretion. NTC has statutory authority to grant provisional relief pending final determination of an application. Provisional authority is temporary, revocable, and not equivalent to a CPCN. The authority granted to ETCI was limited in scope, Phase A, Metro Manila only, subject to conditions, and issued after hearings and prima facie showing of capability. Main proceedings were ordered to continue. Issue 2. Whether ETCI's legislative franchise under RA 2090 covers cellular mobile telephone services. Yes, the franchise may be construed to include cellular mobile telephone services. Administrative agencies are accorded deference in the interpretation of technical terms within their expertise, and legislative franchises may be liberally construed to meet technological developments. NTC reasonably interpreted the term radiotelephony to include cellular communication which uses radio waves. No grave abuse of discretion was shown in this interpretation. Issue 3. Whether ETCI's franchise had lapsed or was forfeited due to non-use. No, the issue could not be resolved in a certiorari proceeding. Forfeiture of a franchise requires a direct action, quo warranto, by the state and must observe due process. Collateral attacks on a franchise are not allowed. PLDT's allegations raised factual questions and constituted a collateral attack on ETCI's franchise, which is impermissible. Issue 4. Whether the transfer of ETCI shares of stock required congressional approval. No, congressional approval is required only for transfer of the franchise, not for transfer of shares. A corporation has a personality separate from its stockholders. Share transfers are governed by the Public Service Act, requiring only NTC approval. The stock transfers were disclosed to and effectively approved by the NTC. Ownership changes did not invalidate ETCI's franchise. Issue 5. Whether the NTC could compel PLDT to interconnect with ETCI. Yes, compulsory interconnection is a valid exercise of police power. Telecommunications is imbued with public interest. Laws and policies mandate interconnection to promote competition, efficiency, and public access. The interconnection requirement served the common good and did not amount to unconstitutional taking or denial of due process. Thank you for listening.